One of the big names, and you've got to be largely responsible for his success. And I speak of the great Dane, Sir Les, Barry Humphries. You were with him for a long time. How long? About 14 years as manager?
Yeah, 15 years.
15 years as manager. Tell me the story about how you and he got to London.
Well, I had a phone call from a guy in Sydney. In those days, I was booking the Federal Hotels casinos around the country. And of course, there was one in Hobart and one in Launceston. I had a phone call from a guy in Sydney, a promoter, who asked me whether I'd be interested in doing some dates in Tasmania with Barry Humphries, who I sort of knew of, didn't know, never met him at all. So we went ahead and we did the tour. We got along very well, went back to Melbourne and saw each other socially in a couple of functions, and then I went off to LA to do some work. And I had a phone call from his solicitor in Sydney while I was in LA asking whether I'd be interested in doing an Australian tour with Barry. So when I got back, I met up with Dick in Sydney and with Barry, and we went ahead and planned the first tour of Australia that I'd done with Barry. Initially it was only in Melbourne. In those days it was interesting. He'd do a show and he sort of liked to do Melbourne but not play anywhere else, and it didn't make any sense not to take it around the country. So we did our first show together in 1982 at Her Majesty's Theatre. The show was called An Evening's Intercourse with Barry Humphries. Great title. So we started off, and halfway through the season, Barry said to me one night backstage, he said, Dennis, he said, we should take this show to England. I said, well, yes, we should, Barry. I think it's a very good idea. Well, I said, you should know, this show should go to England. I said, well, I think that's a very good idea. He said, well, would you book it? And I said, well, no, I've not done anything in London. I said, I've been a number of times, but I've never done a show over there. You'd be better off working with a London producer. He said, oh no. He said, all you do is you book a theatre and put an ad in the Times, and they all come. That's how Barry promoted his show. Put an ad in the Times and they all come. He wasn't far wrong actually, because I then got on a plane while I was still playing in Melbourne. I went to London, and half the theatres in the West End at the time were dark. And he'd already done a show in 1978 at the Piccadilly, which had sold out. So Barry was pretty hot in London. So of course, once the word got around that an Australian producer was walking around looking for a theatre for Barry Humphries, they fell over themselves. And I met with all the big ones, the Sol Mosses and people like that owned all the major theatres. And they took me to see the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, which of course is the mecca of theatres in London. And it was a 2,000-seater. Barry never played anything bigger than about 1,200 in his life. But it was one of those theatres when you stood on the stage, you sort of felt, you could almost reach out and touch the people in the dress circle and had an intimacy. So I booked the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. And I rang him that night from London. I said, we have a theatre. He said, which one? I said, it's the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. And there was this pause, and he said, of course, where else would the Dane play? So we played at Theatre Royal Drury Lane. We then did another season later at the Strand. So we did an evening's intercourse at Drury Lane. Then 4 years later we went back and played the Strand. And we opened with the third biggest advance of any show in the history of the West End with the Strand, which is a 1,000-seater venue. Cats and Phantom were the two biggest, and we were the third biggest advance in a little one-man show with 4 musicians and 3 dancers. It was amazing. And one of the things that did it, the other memory, one of the memories, of course, was that the tradition in London is that they do a charity show before the opening night. And I had some ladies come to see me who were running a charity associated with the hospital, and the idea is you play the charity night and then the opening night. So the charity night gives the charity a chance to make lots of money and sell lots of tickets. So that was fine. We were happy to do the charity night. It was sort of like doing a preview for us. And these ladies came to see me from a hospital in London, and they said we'd like to do the charity night for this forthcoming show. And Prince Charles was the patron of the charity. And of course, you know, if you've got a member of the royal family attending the charity, it means that the seats go like wildfire. And of course, the tickets can sell for lots of money and they make lots of dough. And of course, Charles and Barry are very good friends, so we thought there was a fair chance he'd come to the night. And sure enough, that's what happened. We first got word that he would come. It was during the early days of the relationship with Diana where the first cracks had started to appear. They were not living. Remember the period of time when he was living in London and she was living somewhere up in one of the other palaces. Anyway, about 2 weeks before the charity event, I couldn't believe it. The ladies raced in and said, "Mr. Smith, guess what's happened? The Princess of Wales is coming as well." So the two of them turned up for our charity night. So as producer, of course, I had to stand out at the front of the Strand and welcome the royal family, the two of them to the show, and look after them at interval and then take them and meet them at the cast backstage, etc. And then a few weeks later, Fergie and Andrew, the court, came to see the show as well. And we had them in the green room at the interval, and Fergie came up to me and said, "Mr. Smith," she said, "do you think Dame Edna could take the piss out of my husband? Take the piss out of my father, who was in the audience with them?" And I said, "Oh, it would be a bit of a setup because by then Major Long was pretty well known. You remember Major Long?" Well, what we overlooked was the fact that in 1982, when we did the Drury Lane season, one of the things that we did in the show, Barry had this theory that if you gave people things to do on stage, they wouldn't feel embarrassed or uncomfortable in front of all these people. So he had a barbecue on stage with a senior citizen called up from the audience with a barbecue apron and a hat, and he cooked the chops and sausages. We had a good cleaner to do it. And he had 4 women up with a garden setting, and one of them cut the buttered the bread rolls, the other one made the salad, and he sort of just wandered around and talked to them. It was like a little garden party on stage and nobody else was there. And as it turned out, one of the senior citizens that got up in 1982 at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane was Ron Ferguson, long before anybody knew that he was famous for being Fergie's father. So that's what she was talking about, because we got him up 4 years earlier when nobody knew him. So there you go, just a couple of memories of our season in London.
Wonderful memories of Barry Humphries.